My guest today started practicing law in 1970, before the internet, before email, before anyone had even coined the phrase employment law as a specialty. Joseph Garrison didn't follow a path, he helped create one. He was one of roughly 10 lawyers who founded the National Employment Lawyers Association. This is a story about what it takes to build something that lasts, what it cost you, and what happens when things you built become bigger than you could ever imagine. He built a firm in New Haven that produced federal judges. He tried cases for over 45 years, and then in 2023, he chose to walk away from client work entirely and start a completely new chapter. Welcome back to Process Overpressure. Host Chad Paris today. Today I have a special guest. My guest today started practicing law in 1970, before the internet, before email, before anyone had even coined the phrase employment law as a specialty. Joseph Garrison didn't follow a path, he helped create one. He was one of roughly 10 lawyers who founded the National Employment Lawyers Association when plaintiff side employment work was almost non-existent. He built a firm in New Haven that produced federal judges. He tried cases for over 45 years, and then in 2023, he chose to walk away from client work entirely and start a completely new chapter. This is a story about what it takes to build something that lasts, what it cost you, and what happens when things you built become bigger than you could ever imagine. Joe, welcome to Process Overpressure.
Thank you.
Joe, it is a pleasure to have you today, and I'd love to start just to let the audience know a little bit about you. I mean, what a career you had, and what you've been able to accomplish in your time. And so for the audience out there listening, tell a little bit about yourself and where you come from, where you reside today, and give us a little quick version of what Joe's up to.
Okay. Well, I've been a resident of Connecticut, New Haven area for the last 45 years. So that's where I have been basically. I was born in California. We lived in Missouri outside of St. Louis for a number of years. But I will tell you the things that I think made a difference as I was growing up and getting into law school and the kinds of things I thought about. Number one, for those of you who are parents, you might think of, I'm not sure how camps work these days, but when I was a youngster and started at 8 years old, I started going to camp in Maine, and I started there for 1 month in the first year, but then I went on to 2 months after that because I liked it so much. And what I learned there was a lot about leadership, a lot about cooperating with other people. It was really an amazing thing. And so I'm pretty sure most people who are thinking about how do you start law practice or what should I do in school don't think about camp, but I'm just saying, get something else. Get something else. It's not just school. It's important to be able to get along with people, and that's a great way to do it. Myself, I went to Wesleyan University in Connecticut, and sort of following my unbelievably, looking back, on difficult program, Wesleyan had a really interesting program that did not involve grades. It involved seminars with basically full professors all the way through. I thought that was a terrific one, and I got into it, and in fact it was. I learned so much. We had to write a paper every single week, and it was really an amazing interchange. But the difficulty with it was because it didn't have grades. It was pass-fail. When I applied to law school, even though we explained all of this, we thought it was a little difficult, and I just found I wasn't getting much of a response from any law school. Luckily, eventually, Cornell Law School did accept me. I was lucky to be able to interview up there. I think it made a difference. And so I went to Cornell, which was a great law school anyway, and graduated from there in 1968. At that point, I had gone to, you have what are called law school summers. And this is another thing that was interesting for me, especially in my second year. Some friends and I were driving out to California. I had a job that my uncle had arranged for me in San Francisco involving insurance. I was supposed to work for an insurance company. And as we were traveling out, I found out that the job disappeared.
Oh, gosh. Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, yeah. To say the least, it changed my focus somewhat.
I bet so. Wow. Yeah.
Because my focus changed honestly from having a job to well, I had a job because I had to earn some money, but the job had nothing to do with law at that point, nothing. And I left it fairly early after I had enough money to travel around the West, and we went to national parks with a couple of other friends, and it did change my focus on law school, because up to then I had thought I would probably do what a lot of law students do, and that is work with a big firm and
Yeah.
do the kind of work for corporations, et cetera, et cetera. But with that, I changed my focus fairly completely.
Wow.
And at graduation, again, probably nobody else should follow what I did. I'm not suggesting that it's a great idea.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you, it did change the way I thought. I got married the week after I graduated from law school, and my wife and I are still together. This is our 58th year.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. That is something I recommend. So if you can stay married, if you get a great wife, it's a real help.
Well, what a great graduation gift.
Well, for me, that's for sure. And I think for her too, of course. We took a year off. That was one of the things interesting. So after law school and after what I had said, how everything changed, I decided, well, no better change than to take a year off. And we went to Spain, mainly. We were in Barcelona for a number of, for really 8 or 9 months in Spain and Barcelona. And I had left resumes back in the U.S. And I got a job offer from Alaska, which I thought, Spain's better than Alaska, probably.
Yeah.
So I didn't
That's
go
a
to
big
Alaska.
difference from Connecticut too, isn't it?
And then a couple of months after the Alaska job, I did get a job offer from New Haven. I had interviewed there and really did like it, and probably because of my Wesleyan connection as well.
Yeah.
And so I accepted that with the proviso that my wife and I needed a couple more months to travel around Europe.
Yeah.
And they said, okay. And so I started after that. It was in New Haven Legal Assistance Corporation. And that was one where many of you may be used to the idea of legal assistance offices.
Yeah.
Yeah, we represented people who really were unable to afford lawyers and needed lawyers because they had some serious legal problems. For me, it was a terrific learning experience. And the reason why was because I was able to meet so many prospective clients.
Yeah.
And this kind of the overview was accept the client if possible, because otherwise they would have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
But there were so many that you did have to be careful about who you did accept. And
that's fascinating. And I guess that's probably a really great thing too, because like you said, you get to meet so many people, right? There's people who need help, and offering that service to them. And how do you pick? Like, oh my goodness, you said, how do you pick through them? Like, to know which one to go with.
Yeah, at some point, almost all new lawyers take too many. That included me. And then you find that, wow, you're working all the time. It's really hard, and so you do learn to cut back, and you do learn how to figure out to some extent who you should not accept. I got better and better at that, as obviously as the years went along. But you learn some things about settlement, because almost everybody on the other side wanted to settle with clients who had no money.
Yeah,
there was nothing for them to continue to be in litigation. And so honestly, in many cases, settlement was rather deceptively easy. And it was deceptively easy because, our clients had little or no income. So while you learn a lot about how to do it, you also learn that you have a lot more power in this settlement situation than you would have thought.
Yeah, I'm thinking, Joe, you and I was talking like, in 1970, you started, but you were on the plaintiff side, which is really not something that was, I would say, like, I don't think everybody was coming out maybe going, oh, let's be on the plaintiff side. But you was like kind of I don't say nomad, but you kind of like, hey, let me do this, and I guess, was it from this that kind of sparked your interest to be on the plaintiff side?
Yeah, kind of half and half, because we were on the defense side and legal assistance in general, but
Yeah.
not always. But what I did like was working with people. I really liked that. And so when I decided I was going to leave the legal assistance office and start a practice myself, I had a good friend who had been with me in legal assistance for 4 years, and he had started private practice a year before. And we talked, and it worked out so that his practice, which was an individual practice, doubled all of a sudden when he and I got together. And now we were two people. And so we had to flip a coin. This is kind of fun. We had to flip a coin about what the name would be. And
that's great.
I won the coin flip. So the name became Garrison and Con instead of Con and Garrison. And it was actually a fairly general practice. And it was a really mostly a practice which took on anything. And it was mostly plaintiff work.
Yeah.
But there was one exception. And that was became an interesting and really important exception for me. And that was another good friend had, there was an election in New Haven, a new mayor came in, and another good friend of mine became general counsel. And he asked me if I would become counsel for the city of New Haven in all of their cases. Well, and I was salaried to do that. So, I mean, that was nice to have a salary. It was probably worked out in the end. I didn't realize this probably worked out in the end to be about $20 an hour because there was so much work.
Man, not a bit a good idea.
It was a good idea, though, not in terms of the money, but it was a good idea in terms of what I learned, because the city was inundated by cases in the federal court from a particular lawyer in New Haven, and the city would not. Their policy was they were going to not settle any of those cases, not a single one, because he just filed all the time, and so and generally. Cases where the police officers were defendants, and they were virtually all jury trials, and they were all in the federal court. But the nice thing about it was that my clients, police defendants, were great on preparing. They really were. They wanted to win the case, and they knew they had to set aside time to do that. They would get me other witnesses, fairly easy to do for them. And I tried approximately 20 cases in the federal court. Almost nobody did that much work that early.
Wow.
And luckily for me, I lost only 2 of them. I hardly even considered those to be losses, because one of them was a very small verdict for about $6,000 for really a very serious injury. I didn't think it was very well presented, honestly, by the other counsel, but that was one that I lost. The other one was only a property damage recovery, and all of the other ones I won.
Wow.
Almost all in the federal court. So
that's really cool.
That was really an amazing experience for me.
I bet that, and I just recently had my civic duty. I was picked to be a juror on a civic trial. Never have done that. And I tell you, Joe, and for somebody who's, never been on the inside of the courtroom very much, thank goodness I'm not in the court having to do that. I will tell you that as a country, we should be very thankful. What a great process it was to be able to do that, and something that I was nervous about, but to sit in that and just see the lawyers, how they work alongside the judge, and really how you examine that. Like, we're very fortunate in this country. I don't think people realize that, like, how great the jury system and just our legal system together is what it's like is really amazing. And it was a great experience.
Yeah, and thanks for saying that, because whenever I could, after a trial was over, I would talk to the jurors. I had to get the judge's permission before that.
Yeah.
Some judges said, yes, you can, and other judges said, no, you can't. Well, if they said no, I obviously didn't, but a number of them would just say yes. And I tried as hard as I could to reach as many of the jurors as I could do. And their experience was just like yours. Most of them had not been on a jury before, and they thought the process was just terrific. They really enjoyed it. And they enjoyed it, even though it was hard for them. I mean, you have to really listen to the evidence.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. I mean, I was absolutely exhausted at night coming back from it because you're constantly listening and really paying attention.
Yeah.
And for me, I was sitting. This is what came to my mind. I was like, this is a civic trial, right? It's an accident. Somebody's wanting money. In the grand scheme of things, like I was thinking, like I've got to make this decision, and I know we wasn't making a decision over life or death or a murder trial or anything like that. I was like, I don't think I could ever be a juror for a murder trial. This is too much pressure.
That's why I did all the civil cases.
Yeah,
I agree with you on that one.
I was like, this was the pressure enough, and it was just a civil case. I was like, ooh, I couldn't do a big one.
Well, there were a lot of civil cases that were, quite important, and because so many of these that I was trying were against the city and against the police department of the city, it was important because, a lot sort of was concerned if you were, if you lost a case, then it could result in changes of policy or anything else, could result in any number of things. And so it was, they were important city cases, but the other good thing for me was here I was in the federal court almost always. And that's a place a lot of lawyers never get to go.
Yeah.
And it was really a great experience for me.
Totally different, I'm imagining, being in a circuit court, obviously being in a federal, like just amplified 10 times the pressure, right?
Yeah. One of the cases that, but by the same token, I was bringing cases in the federal court that were clients of our office. And one in particular, one of the very early cases that I tried was one where my client was employed by Chesebrough-Ponds, and it was an employment case. Well, when you said I did early employment cases, you're absolutely right. That may have been one of the first employment cases that was ever tried in the federal court, at least in Connecticut. Probably in some places. California was ahead of the game in employment, but Connecticut wasn't. And so there was a lot of publicity on this case because the defendant was Chesebrough-Ponds. It's a well-known company and frankly in the country, but they're located in Connecticut, their headquarters. So there was a lot of publicity on the case itself, and I got a $600,000 verdict, which is in the early 1980s, and
that's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That was so much that the federal judge reduced it to $200,000.
Wow.
Yeah, because he was just incensed in a sense that we won so much, and he just didn't think that should hold up. Well, okay, and he did award attorney's fees, of course, so the client got that, but it was the win that made the big difference to the client. That was what really made the difference.
Joe, I just fascinating talking with you, and even when we did our pre-talk, just kind of learning about you, and one of the things that. I mean, you may not say this, but I can just from the research. I mean, you've had a successful career. You've had a long career in law and federal, like you said, being in federal court and doing that. And I think one of the things that when you were talking to me that stood out that I'd love to talk about is you and about maybe 9 others, I think, or 10 of you guys founded NELA, which you may want to tell about. Like that's a huge thing today. Was it when you were early on in practicing, but massive today? And you kind of was the part of one that got that going and started that. That's pretty impressive, pretty cool.
Well, yeah, thanks. I mean, I agree with that. It was that's an important development in employment law, particularly for lawyers that represent employees. And frankly, anybody that's listening and is in that category and you represent an employee and you're not in the National Employment Lawyers Association, go join it because it's a terrific organization. And yes, we were in the early stages of organizing, and I know it. The 10 of us, we were all really good lawyers, honestly, and we were all in the same position of starting practices in various states that were, generally speaking, the first and only practice for plaintiffs. And so it was a really important thing to do, and it expanded and expanded, and now it has 6,000 members that come to, lots of them come to the conventions that are held every year. It's a big it's a big deal now, and it was really important for me to look at. Lots of state organizations, same way. Almost every state has a plaintiff's employment.
How many members are they at now? Do you know? How many are?
I think it's nationally. I think it's around 6,000.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
a lot.
it is
That's
a
a
lot.
lot.
It is a lot. And
And do you still do the conventions? Do you still go?
I went last year. Last year was the 40th. How about that?
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
40 years.
I
Something
know.
you started and is still going at 40 years.
Yep.
How about that?
Yep.
Wow.
So I was a speaker because I used to be the president for 3 years of the organization. And they had a panel that had a bunch of us who were presidents of the organization speak about some of the most interesting things that we thought about how to develop a practice and so on. And it was a really good organization. And that was a very good convention, naturally. But
And I'm sure you've got lifelong friends from being in that organization, not just in Connecticut, but all over that
oh, that's right.
practice law
Yep.
and develop relationships over the time. And
That's right.
I mean, I think that's one of the most hidden gems, in my opinion, as a business owner and a leader. Putting yourself around the right kind of people and learning from them, and having conversation with them, and being okay to say, "Hey, what's your thoughts on this? How do I, how could I?" Always, I guess what I'm saying is always getting better,
Right.
and being around the right people helps you get better.
You're not kidding. And particularly when you mention business, that's not taught in law school. Well, it wasn't when
Yeah.
I was there. I mean, I hope that they teach it now, because it is, a lot of people go out and they do have to open their own business, and they have no idea about how to do it, including me. I had no real idea about how to start a business. I had some idea from having clients before, that, like I said, in legal services, but actually making money. So,
You know what? You would be shocked. I mean, I work with law firms, and I hear that I hear that a lot. I mean, even younger lawyers today that, they go to law school and they're good at law. Like, they know it. They're very, very good lawyers, because I think school trains them to be very good lawyers. But when it comes to the business, and as they grow and they start bringing clients in, and their workload, and they end up a lot. This is what I hear a lot. I hear a lot of them that are frustrated because they don't get to spend their time what they love, which is practicing law. They're having to do the business side of it, and I've been able to help some of them with the processes and procedures, and setting up some stuff to help them where they can do more of what they love. So it's very common even today. It's and a lot of and I've heard a lot of them say they almost quit because of it. They burn out.
yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. But if you're going to start on your own, where you have to think, I believe you have to start from the beginning and think, I need to figure out how to expand. I know there are an awful lot of solo practitioners out there, and I have a great deal of admiration for them. I don't know how they do it. And for me, I hired fairly quickly a lawyer who, actually was one of the ones that left our office to become a federal judge later, because she was so good as a lawyer herself, and she's been a great federal judge. We've stayed friends forever. But that was really important, because the first guy, the guy that I went with originally, had split off because I was doing employment law almost always, and he did not do any, and he did basically the other parts of law, motor vehicle, et cetera, et cetera. So it was important for me to have somebody else working with me. And then the other thing that we did was we merged with another firm that had 5 lawyers. So there, all of a sudden, we had
Grew, yeah.
7 of us. And once again, somehow my name, I forget how this time, but my name became still the number 1 in the firm. So that was helpful.
You were a good gambler.
I was.
Isn't that what makes a good lawyer?
To some extent, yes, absolutely. Yeah, because you do a lot of gambling, and you better be good at it.
You better be good at it.
That's why I don't gamble otherwise. I figured I already did enough for myself. Yeah, so that was another thing that I did that really helped. And that group was an amazing group. I'm just looking at because another one became a state court judge, another one became a federal judge. So that was 3 judges out of 7 lawyers. I'll say I had something to do with producing federal judges.
I was going to ask you. I know you may not want to talk about it, but one of the things that a lot of our listeners may not know, and lawyers that are out there, how many federal judges have you produced? And I say that because they work for you and you trained and molded them. How many?
Well, two federal judges and one state court judge. The state court judge went on to be the chief judge in his whole district. So, anyway, these were obviously excellent lawyers. And the nice thing for me is my wife and I have remained friends with them. Just within the last 3 weeks, we've been to dinner with both of them separately. And so,
Well, and
it is a really good thing to have had.
there's not a lot of people can say they hire people and then they become either federal judges or chief of judges. So you had a good knack, not only being a good lawyer, but you had a good knack of hiring the right people.
I did, and I really do believe that was a big part of my own success, naturally. So let me go. That sort of segues into what I was going to say otherwise.
Yeah.
Sort of what else does it take to become successful? First was hire the best people that you can get. And that isn't just lawyers. In our office, as we expanded out to 7 lawyers, well, we had 10 for a little bit, and that was too much, but we've ended up with 7 and stayed there. Paralegals are really important also, or legal assistants, whichever they may be called. I would say don't call anybody a secretary, because that is passé. And legal assistant is much better. Paralegal is much better, and that's what we had. We had usually 3 to 4 paralegals or legal assistants, and that was really, really helpful. And then comes the question of what about hiring other lawyers, new ones or experienced ones? And that's a hard choice, but again, it sort of involves some gambling, that's for sure. If they're experienced, you really do need to look carefully at what the experience has been. You need to get a lot of references. You need to get references from judges as well as from other lawyers. They're going to present themselves in the best light that they can. But if you really dig deep, that unfortunately some are not as good as they say they are. The ones that are, then go ahead and try to get them in your firm. And we went up to, as I said, at one point we went up to 10. That turned out to be too many. And so we didn't fire anybody, but when somebody was ready to leave, we were not concerned about that. That was fine. We tried to keep the best. I think we ended up doing that. Second thing is get nice office space. That is really important. I've looked at, as I go by, you drive around town and you can see people who are lawyers, and a lot of them practice from their homes, which I think actually is a great idea in terms of making income and keeping it. But it has to look nice, and it needs to be. It has to have something that makes it look like a law office, particularly when somebody comes inside. We had a nice brownstone in New Haven. There was a group of brownstones that were all built in about 1864, so there was some nice history to that. Ours had parking in the back. That was really important. It was important for us to be able to park, of course, but for clients as well, it was useful. We had extra space in the building. We knew that would be helpful because then we could expand. But in the interim, we rented the space. So that was some income that came into the building, and generally rented to lawyers, but a couple of times to others. And that was helpful. That was good income. And it was, every year, every month, you're going to get the rent.
Great advice.
Yeah, and then another thing I think is really important for lawyers to do is go to seminars or go to workshops and educate yourself. I did that for 40 years. I didn't think I'd learned so much that I never needed to go to anymore to listen to other people. And every time that I would go to a national convention, which was basically every year, I always learned something that was very helpful, very new. I spoke at a bunch of them, but it really was useful to have. And then you have a connection with lawyers in almost every state. And if you make referrals, we make referrals. You get referrals, and those come from people that you knew, and many of them you knew from these seminars or workshops. Another really important thing is, in my opinion, respect your opposing counsel. I don't care how stupid or goofy your employment counsel is, or obnoxious. That's more than stupid or goofy. They're more often somebody who's opposing you and is obnoxious is one that's hard to deal with, no question about it. But you have got to just show respect rather than something else. You will get somewhere with somebody like that, even when you think you're not getting there. You really will. And what is interesting is that if you do that, generally speaking, eventually the respect will run both ways. You get referrals after that from the lawyers that, you thought you would never get a referral from. But just the idea of how do you do the best thing for your client? You do it by giving respect to the opposing counsel, because then you won't get a response in terms of negotiation that's based on, well, I don't like this guy, so I'm not going to help.
Yeah.
It goes, I think this guy is he's a decent guy, or of course, the guy includes women for a long time now, and so respect really helps.
Yeah, I mean, it's professionalism, right?
Yes, it is.
It's treating other people the way you would want to be treated, and
absolutely,
you may be going up against, and I've seen this, where it was, they're bantering back and forth, and clearly one is not very organized or very prepared, which is common, happens. I mean, you've been in cases where the lawyer just is like, did you even, did you do any, I mean, did you know what's going on while you're here? I mean, you want to say that internally, but you can't treat them that way, right? You have to treat them as if they're, you got to do your job defending, taking care of your client, but at the same time, it can be challenging, right? To respect, you want to look at them and go, hey, I mean, do you even know where you are right now? But you just can't do that, right?
Yeah, and it's not just in court. I mean, it's more likely to occur when you're trying to negotiate or something like that. And if you have respect, even if they're not going to show it, frankly, if you have shown respect to them, it affects them, and it affects them in a way that is helpful. You're trying to settle a case at the best possible monetary amount. And if there's respect from the other side, even when they don't show it, they're more apt to be listening to you. They're more apt to consider what you're saying as being much more persuasive. And anyway, it's a huge thing to think about doing, and doing it right. The other thing is, it's not always good things that happen in your cases.
Yeah.
And when something bad happens in a case, you have got to inform your client about it. You've got to do it, because it does affect the value of the case, or can. And generally speaking, where does that occur? It occurs when your client's deposition is being taken, or a witness who you thought was going to be supportive is being taken in a deposition. And there are things in the deposition that don't work out the way you will have wished they did.
That's why they do them, right?
That's why they do them. And we get the same thing on our side. I'll tell you, I don't know how many cases I've improved settlements by getting some really great information that I didn't understand that I would think I would get, or who knows. But you need to inform the client when that happens, because then you really need to talk about how that has affected the value of the case. You have to be honest with the client about these things. Because clients always think that their case is worth way too much money. So educating them on that starts really from the beginning, but it's more important when something like that happens in the time that their own deposition is taken. That really happens then. Same is true on the obverse side, by the way, and that is when something good happens, it's nice to be able to inform your client about that. It's nice to be able to adjust the settlement value upwards.
Sure.
Yeah. So
for everybody.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, I have seen so many instances where it's been very clear to me that the clients have not been informed about what's going on. And I've seen that with other lawyers, and I've always sort of wondered, your client just gave me some testimony I never expected. You must not have talked to him or her about it beforehand, and that's generally true.
Yeah. Well, so I wanted to, if we could, because we're getting close. We got about 5 minutes left in our time together.
Sure.
And what I'd love to do is kind of let's talk about 45 years, I believe is what you said. You practiced. You were practicing, and you walked away, and you still work. You're not just sitting at home, but you walked away, but you didn't stop. And so what does the next chapter feel like? What is it compared to when you were practicing every day, and maybe for those that are I think you've had a great career, and you've done a lot. Being a lawyer is serving the people, and you've done that. And you've had 45 years, built a lot of relationships, still have relationships, and now you're kind of in this next chapter, or so to speak, or however you want to say it. what does that look like to you? And maybe like giving to the next generations listening, like, man, if I could go back to 1970, this is the way I would do it.
Well, if I were going back to 1970, what I would do is just think very, very, very carefully about the most important component of your practice, and that is the clients that you select. Yeah. Now, that's different in the plaintiff side than the defense side. Obviously, the defense bar can't really select their clients in many respects. I mean, the firm has got a bunch of clients and they assign them to you and so on. That's fine. But on the plaintiff side, you have to select your clients. And so there are certain questions that I would say you need to really think about. Number one is, should you charge a consultation fee for a prospective client? My answer to that has been for all of the years, yes. And there are a couple of reasons why. I think it should be less than your normal hourly fee. At least it always has been for us. It ought to be something that people can probably afford, although some may not. If people are reluctant or don't pay a consult fee, what that means to me is they wouldn't have been a very good client, because they do have to spend money in the course of a case. We made a practice as much as we could not to advance money for clients, because the clients have to have some skin in the game, just what people talk about all the time. It really is important. And if you think it's not, go back and think about who were your worst clients. I'll bet they were the ones that didn't pay any money at all. I really bet that's true. And so anyway, I always think there should be a consultation fee, and depending on how your fee are structured, otherwise, probably not the full hourly amount, but something that makes a difference and looks like, you're somebody who someone would have to pay to see, someone that, they just need to put out a little extra themselves and get involved in the game in that way. I think it's very important. Second thing is what the consult fee situation will be is that, sometimes that will mean you won't get a prospective client. My view of that has always been, that's fine. You probably didn't want that person anyway. In the end, you would have been sorry you did it. But then the next thing is, are you going to meet with them, or are you just going to talk on the phone, or what are you going to do? I think you need to meet with them. Everybody knows people. You're different when you're talking to somebody directly than if you're just talking on the phone or something like that and you never see the person. It can be very nice on a telephone call, but if the person really came in, all of a sudden you might see something quite different. It could be as there's so many things it could be that would say to you, I don't like this person. That's the key. If you don't like the person, do not take a person as a client that you don't like. I don't care how good the case is. Yeah. I learned my own lessons from this, from taking clients that I didn't like, and ended up, they took, how you say sometimes the best clients take about 25% of your time, and the worst clients take the other 75%. That's what it is what it is. And you will learn who the worst ones might be by meeting them. And you can't learn it otherwise. So all you young lawyers that think, or others, I don't care who, but if you don't do it, start to do it.
That's good.
It'll take you a little more time, but that time is absolutely worth it. Because if you take a bad client, just like I said, that's going to be in your 75% time frame where you don't want it to be.
Yeah. Well, Joe, this has been an absolute fantastic time with this podcast. A lot of great stuff here, and being able to have this opportunity to such a great career you've had, and have a chance to talk to you, and really, my hope is that people that are out there that are listening, whether you're a lawyer or you're in business, I think a lot of what you said is so relevant, and in business world, and whether it be a lawyer or whatever you're doing is perspective. That's the word that kept coming up to me as you were talking, is your perspective. Be who you say you're going to be, and do what you say you're going to do is one of the most important things a person can do. And if I had to, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I have a firm belief after spending some time with you that that's exactly who you are.
Well, thank you. It sounds like you're thinking well of me, and I also appreciate that. And what I would say is that if people are interested at all, that they could you can give them my email. It's fine with me if you want to. But if people have some questions or observations or something, or they even want to talk with me, it's fine with me. Like I say, I'm retired and doing quite well, and so I'm not going to charge for time.
Listen to me, the only time you get Joe without being charged, so you better take advantage of it.
That could be it. But anyway, I've enjoyed this, and I do hope some people that have been listening have learned something from it that could help them.
Well, I think it's great, and we're gonna put this out there, and hopefully have some people to hear it. So, thank you again for doing this. Thank you for being a guest. I've really enjoyed my time with you.